then also just I made it.
Hi, my name is Jake. I'm fourth year philosophy major, and the thing that I'm most excited about this is figuring out how to combine different AI agents through these LLMs to make like a whole alternative personality on the internet, which would kind of like make multiple versions of you. And I think that's a direction that we're heading to some extent.
I'm interested in that stuff too, the digital immortality. Like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
I use ChatGPT a little too much. I just want to see, how much more I can do.
Yeah, I feel like I have much to learn from everyone here, actually. Like, I watch the TikToks, and I'm like, the kids are way ahead of the adults on this problem. Cool.
Use it better, or like just learn more about it.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, I think now we can go ahead and dive into the demonstrations.
Mhm.
There's a couple tools that he's going to introduce, and then after that, we'll have a brief fireside chat Q&A. You guys will have the opportunity to ask questions.
Cool. So I can share my screen?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Oh, right. And then that'll capture the recording?
Yes.
Okay. What the hell am I looking at? Sure. Give me a second. Did it work? Wait. Zoom check. Reopen. Now let me do this from full screen first. Yeah. Okay, I think I need to read. Okay, so it's recording, right? Okay, cool. So now if I share my screen. Okay. Sure. Can you see it? Nice. Thank you. Thank you. All right, sweet. Cool. So I guess we'll jump right in. So one of my old coworkers at the last company, I used to work on Clubhouse, this like viral social audio app. And one of my coworkers, when ChatGPT came out, it was one of the most popular topics on the app that I'd seen since NFTs. And when I noticed pretty much this topic was breaking out in every single country, in every single language. And my friend told me, and he's much more experienced than me in tech, but he told me that what this meant was that natural language is the new user interface. And so it took a few months for me to really grasp what that meant. It took a few months of interacting with ChatGPT and building tools on top of GPT-4 to figure out what this actually meant. But where I'm at is like, I hope to kind of get some of this across to you guys, is that it's no longer about buttons and drop downs and like windows and screen. Those things are not actually user interface. Natural language, now we can actually speak to these computers and get them to do pretty complicated cognitive tasks through basic regular English, right? And so I think that's like the biggest unlock in tech since maybe Fire, but I'm kind of like obsessed with this. That's why I say that. Yeah, I think this is maybe one of the biggest, like ChatGPT and the technologies like it are probably the biggest thing to happen to in human history since Phi. I'll quickly go over like why I think so. Also, I have not really looked at this deck. I had GPT generate this deck before we got here, so we'll see how good it is together. And then I'll probably just like riff off of it, but really like I'm more interested in seeing what we can talk about together, because I know you guys are also power users. Cool. What's this slide about? Okay, cool. It's just me. I graduated in 2017, studied math econ, and I worked at startups. I worked on a presidential campaign. If you guys know who Andrew Yang was, the guy who ran on math. I did the math for his campaign. And then, yeah, ChatGPT added a little sentence. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. So large language models, I think everyone knows, these are like advanced AI systems capable of generating human-like text. So that's everything from code to languages. I mean, every possible programming language. Yeah, this is kind of generic. Basically, LLMs are the underlying technology that's powering this like shift. And the fact that we can interact with them through natural language means that the barrier to create has been drastically lowered. So if you think about it, people who can develop apps by talking to a chatbot are actually also developers. They may not think of themselves as engineers, but that means that engineering is no longer required to develop software. And so this is a big unlock, because I mean, you can imagine a world where a 5-year-old can deploy a compelling app or a video game. And if they can just do that through natural language sometime in the future, then that's a pretty big unlock for creative like potential and like honestly all of society. And then I want to talk a little bit about agents. So AI agents are like a next iteration of ChatGPT that we're starting to see hit the scene, which is relatively autonomous chatbots that can do more complicated tasks or chain reaction of tasks. So you have an agent, you tell it to go research an industry. Can it go break that down into subtasks? Can it go search the web? Can it turn it into a synthesizable report? Can it email you? So this is like the next frontier of LLMs. LLMs being the ability to generate text, agents being the ability for a text generating system to interact with tools and do more complicated like work. And you're gonna see agents start taking over all aspects of society. It's like the better equivalent is, everyone's seen Iron Man. Like if you haven't seen Iron Man, he's like, he has this suit and then he has this like chatbot that's built into the suit, and it's called Jarvis, and he talks to Jarvis. And then there's a scene in Infinity War where Iron Man's talking to Bruce Banner, and he's describing what Jarvis is. And he says, started off, Jarvis was just a natural language interface. Now, Jarvis runs more of the company than anyone than Pepper. Then I stopped that right there, and I was like, wait a minute. That means that Stark Industries, this imaginary tech company, has like, his wife is the CEO, and then this chatbot runs the rest of the company, is what he's saying. And I think that like, that's what the promise of AI agents actually starts looking like, is like, if we can design formidable natural language interfaces that can go and do relatively autonomous like tasks, you start ending up in a world of like sci-fi where maybe a chatbot can eventually design an entire company or like run large parts of your company. And then what does that mean for like small teams? What does that mean for startups? Like why would you hire 500 people if you could build or use the right AI agent to help support that side of the business? It's a little bit more on the frontier, but it's definitely on the roadmap. Okay, custom GPTs. Who here is like, okay, who's can I get a raise of hands? Like, who's using GPT-4? Nice. And then if you're not using GPT-4, you guys still use ChatGPT? Yeah. Okay, Bing is GPT-4, and it's paired with the web browser, and I'll explain why that's important. That's a good point. So custom GPTs are a new thing that OpenAI has launched, and they're basically like the ability to in engineering terms, it's like the ability to fork ChatGPT, but make it custom for your use case. So like you can basically take ChatGPT, give it a role, you can give it tools, and you can basically start getting it to do more specialized work. One example of that is StratGPT, a little chatbot that I built, which I talked to generate this entire presentation. So however this presentation goes, I'm blaming the chatbot, but we'll see. But it's basically ChatGPT given a couple tools, a web browser, and like the ability to write Python code. But what that means is now you can have a chatbot go and do relatively complicated stuff that you previously we thought that we needed human beings to do, but now you can do it through like a natural language interface, which is crazy. And custom GPTs are basically OpenAI's first foray into reducing the barrier to create AI systems down to natural language. So anyone here can make a custom GPT, and that's incredibly powerful. Like if you don't actually have to hire engineers to build the first version of your product, that means you can reach a prototype without necessarily having to burn investor capital. You might not even need to raise investor capital. And so the idea that we can reduce the barrier to create down to natural language opens up a whole new, like I think it's a Cambrian explosion of brand new creators, like people that don't necessarily view themselves as like engineers, but can now create pretty advanced technology that's useful, that can like create economic value. StratGPT is just one chatbot I built. I built it custom. I built it on the API a couple months ago, and then now I rebuilt it as a custom GPT. But what it does is it basically, it's a strategy generator with hotkeys. So like you say what you want to do, and then it starts trying to help you accomplish that. And then it always asks intelligent follow-up questions. It's like, here's what you might want to think about. Here's how you might want to structure it. And then also it can generate presentations, because I figured if it's like a strategy consultant, it may as well build a deck. Let's see. All right, cool. I think the two probably most important tools to be paying attention to at the high level are like GPT-4 and Python. You don't actually have to pick up Python, although I personally think that it's like one of the last important, like you can go very far if you choose to pick up, if you pick up one programming language. Who here programs? Like, raise your hand. Holy shit, okay. And who's using Python? Okay, cool. Well, even if you're not, the truth is you can have a chatbot like GPT-4 teach you Python, and you can just have it kind of teach you at your own pace. You describe what you want, and ChatGPT will generate the first version of the code. That's actually kind of how I got here. Back in March, I met a guy, and he's like, dude, you should be talking to GPT-4. It can basically write, like, it can help you build the things you wish existed. And then I went to GPT-4 on a Sunday, and I was just like, hey, show me how to build a GPT-3 powered chatbot. And it wrote the first version of that script. It was just like a locally running chatbot loop on top of the API. And when I saw it was only 20 lines of code, that's when I was like, oh, this is insane. Because if OpenAI has basically, they run the model, they built the model, they got the model weights. But for us to implement it in software is actually very easy. And actually that's where like a lot of the value is in turning the ability to generate text into economic value. So I think GPT-4 and Python are probably like the two most important pieces of technology right now that I can probably name. There's a bunch of other tools that I'll link that are like useful. And there's plenty of tools, but I think especially within the world of like natural language, GPT-4 and Python. And the cool thing is that GPT-4 can teach you Python. So there's this crazy feedback loop. Yeah.
So are you saying that all the other languages are going to be gone soon?
Okay, I think I have a sentence here. I think that Python is the last important programming language.
I saw your LinkedIn.
Yeah. I think it's the last important one. And don't take my word for it. I'm not even a software engineer. I've taught myself these systems, but the way I see it is, I say last important because where I see this going, and my experience with learning Python, is that when you start talking to a chatbot that can code, then what's happening is that natural language is actually the next important programming language. So if you can describe what you want, and then the chatbot system, whatever it is, can actually build the app, then you are developing, and then the programming language is actually whatever language you speak, like English, for example, right? If you tell a chatbot to build your website, is the programming language HTML, CSS, JavaScript? It's actually going to be more like natural language. And then maybe AI systems in the future will have their own languages that are optimized for like that behind the scenes stuff. But it's less important for us to be on that level. It's more important for us to be able to use this natural language interface if those systems keep getting more powerful. So that's you don't have to take my word for it. We'll see if I'm right on that. There will be a need for other programming languages. I just think that it's more narrowly scoped to maybe big data, maybe to different tasks. But I do think Python is becoming the Swiss Army knife. Okay, LLMs as the new operating system. This is not my idea, but this is from a pretty famous like AI researcher at OpenAI. His name is Andrej Karpathy, and he proposed this system. Like he's been working on the system, but proposed it a couple months ago as a hypothetical, that the language models are increasingly looking like a brand new operating system. And what that means is that they're the kernel process of this new operating system. And I tend to agree. Basically, you have like, at its core, you have like a language model that's like the OS, kind of like Windows, kind of like Mac, but instead of like being an interface that you click around in, it's a natural language interface. And then you give it tools to augment it. So for example, language models are trained, but then they have a knowledge cutoff. If you ask ChatGPT who won last week's Colts game, it's going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, as of my knowledge cutoff of September 2021, like I can't answer that. You should go search the web. But if you pair ChatGPT with a web browser like Bing, or if you go to Bing, what that's doing is like GPT doesn't know the answer, but you're saying, hey, GPT, you can use a web browser. So like if you think that the answer exists on the internet, use the web browser to get the answer. And so when you combine an LLM with a web browser, you end up with a chatbot that can answer questions about what's happening in the current world, like today. And that's really like, that was like a pretty big realization for me when I started building on these systems. I was like, oh, if I were to give a chatbot a single tool to make it more useful, I think actually the web browser is probably the best one, the most important tool, because you want it to be able to answer questions about some tech that came out yesterday, instead of if you go to ChatGPT without a web browser and it can't answer the questions of like who released the new tech last week, why did Sam Altman get fired, stuff like that, it's like way less useful. But when you pair it with a web browser, you get this like real world aspect of information. And so it's really powerful. And then you can see there's a couple other, so if you think about Ethernet, that's kind of like the web browser. So instead of, imagine a world where these systems are searching the web on your behalf, you're not going to Google and clicking through a bunch of ads. You're actually just talking to a chatbot that can do large scale research on relative autopilot and then come back to you with the answers. And that's actually when you talk to ChatGPT and you ask about like the Colts game, it goes to Bing and it sees like searching Bing, it rewrites your question as a query. And then it goes and looks at the 50 responses and then tries to answer the question based on what it sees in the response. So that's the web browser side. And then, oh, yeah.
So actually, a question.
Yeah.
Something I hear from a lot of people who are pretty skeptical of ChatGPT is that sometimes it doesn't always tell the truth.
Yeah.
Do you think pairing it with a web browser reduces its like limitations, like I don't know to this date the information, or does it reduce the likelihood that it is not telling the truth?
Yeah. So we're talking about like hallucination, and like that is a like the aspect of language models that's like they're not this is unlike other software. This isn't deterministic, right? You write a query to a database, you expect an answer and you expect a response. But here it's like predicting the next token. And so it's basically operating off of a very compressed vision, like a compressed view of the entire internet and all the text data it was trained on. And so that means that like there's certain things that it randomly doesn't get that you would kind of expect if it actually knew. Like it's like, it can tell you who Tom Cruise's mom is, but if you ask who, like if you type in who is, and then you give Tom Cruise's mom's name, it won't necessarily draw the connection back to Tom Cruise. And so that is a problem. And I think it means that these systems are not, like we need better ways to working with these systems, accepting that they are not deterministic, that they're actually on some level inscrutable. So you can't actually tell to some degree whether it's telling the truth or not, and it'll confidently lie to some degree. But that means that we need to augment it with the right tools and then limit the scope of our questions to what we think it's well equipped to answer. So 2 ways to address the hallucination problem. One is augment the language model with data that does have the answer. So if you have your own data set and you have like a book, or like you have like information about UCLA students, but then like maybe that wasn't in the training data, or you have like information from the last 7 months, like stuff from Twitter. All of a sudden that stuff, real-time information that it wasn't trained on, is kind of more important if you want to answer questions about that, like anything in real time. If you want to answer questions about real-time information, you have to be talking to a chatbot that can at least retrieve real-time information. So yeah, it's basically like it's an area that we're basically building. So like if you think of file system plus embeddings, that's like your hard drive on your computer, right? Like it's where you're storing a bunch of data, and like text embeddings are a way to convert data back into vector representation. So there's a new kind of database, vector databases, and they act as like the chatbot's knowledge base. And so if you don't think it's going to answer the question properly based on the base knowledge of its training, you can give it this knowledge base and then say, hey, when the user asks a question, cross-reference it against the most relevant stuff in your knowledge base and then answer. And so this is one way to deal with hallucination. Yep.
I see one of the points is it can think for a long time using the system.
Yeah. So if you think about LLMs right now, what they do is they just generate the next token. So next token is like the next couple characters. And that's like really good for like, quick response, like analytical, like there's a type of thinking that's like pretty useful for. But what it doesn't necessarily, what the LLM doesn't really have is this, like, if you talk to a system and you're like, spend an hour thinking about the best way to do this and then go start the job. That like planning phase, that reasoning, that higher level reasoning, planning of like, how might I attack it to make the job more successful? That phase is more like system 2 thinking. It's like more macro. It requires more of this reasoning engine. And these, it's not in the base LLM. You kind of have to think about, we are thinking about how to engineer those systems of like, can you set this, like, it's not just enough to generate the next token, but maybe like take into account 6 or 7 different considerations. Like you create a, like it gets into like, can your chatbot plan effectively? Think more critically. And these are like system 2 type things. If you think about system 1 being like more me responding to you in conversation, system 2 is like more maybe me planning my career, right? Yeah. Any questions on LLMs as a possible new OS? Yep.
I mean, what does that do? Just do what feels perfect.
This is a good question. I think that and it affects like the adoption rate of the technology for sure, where like you're more likely to see these tools get adopted when the output is more where it's like subjective is okay. But then there are certain fields where we can't accept like 90% accuracy or like anything less than like a certain high confidence. So I think like it depends on the problem space, and basically where accuracy is required, you'll probably create a more nested solution that can double check and that can cross-reference against other sources. You'll have more levels of abstraction around the LLM. Remember, the LLM has its flaws, but if we wrap it in the right architecture, we can kind of address some of its shortcomings. Yep.
Actually, it's a kind of weird question,
Sure.
and I don't know how closely related it is. But let's say, so you have your LLM, and it's answering questions as you like asking questions. And is it possible for like that LLM to kind of, how do I put it, like store a personality? Let's say like you mold the model to be like, hey, I want the model to kind of talk like Elon Musk,
Yeah.
right? And that's clearly possible right now. It's pretty easy like us to do as well.
Yeah.
But like, let's say we have something like that, and then we let that model kind of continuously have conversations with like one of us for like, let's say multiple hours, like
Yeah.
multiple days. Is it possible to kind of like mold the model to be able to kind of like almost think like Elon Musk in a sense? So for example, like, let's say we give it like some futuristic, like, I don't know, like, tell me how I would make a Tesla 2 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Or tell me how I should think to be able to create a better battery,
Yeah.
something like that. Then would it be able to train the model in a way that it's able to kind of like almost predict what that person is thinking based on the conversation, or is that not like?
I think it's this is, so you can get, basically we can give the model, and I think part of how we work with LLMs is we start with saying like we create a system prompt and say like, this is what you are, and you give it a role. It's kind of like, it's like you are Elon Musk. But then what it's doing is like it's like approximating in latent space what Elon Musk represents, and then trying to respond in that style. So at best, it is pretending, right? It's not an actual person. Remember that, obviously. But there are benefits. What you're kind of doing is like you're kind of cheating a bunch of like you're getting it to pretend to be someone that you think is formidable in a problem space, and then you want to see if it interacts. I think you can definitely create puppets that are quite immersive, and with knowledge bases you can store longer term knowledge bases can be used to store longer term memories. That's like why if you look at this diagram, it's like the context window is like the chat window when you're talking to a chatbot. Eventually, so every LLM has a context limit. GPT-4's new context limit is 128,000 tokens. That's equivalent to about 240 pages of a book, I think. So tokens are like a quarter of a word, something like 2 or 3 letters. And then there's this extra game all these model providers, Anthropic, OpenAI, everyone is playing. They're trying to make these models. They're trying to scale their context window. And if you compare that to the existing operating system, it's kind of like RAM, right? Like RAM used to be that 256 MB RAM was like pretty good, but now we have like 1632 MB RAM. Like that's like standard, right? So there was this like scaling up of the context that a computer could handle at any one given point in time. And similarly in language models, they're throwing much compute at building bigger language models that can handle larger context. So OpenAI released GPT-4 in March 14th of this year, and the unreleased the context window was 8,000 tokens. And so a lot of people started using Anthropic's cloud because they rolled out a model that had 100,000 token limit. And so like if you want something that can like interface with functions and write code, and you probably still want GPT-4, but if you want something to understand a book, you might want, or summarize something super long, you might use cloud. And that's because cloud kind of invested in this, like expanding the token limit. Now, OpenAI has a higher token limit, 128,000, and now cloud has a 200,000 token limit. So there's this like arms race going on. And then you kind of like, this is why like you can't just plug in Lord of the Rings into ChatGPT and expect it to understand it. But also ChatGPT has a compressed understanding of what Lord of the Rings is because it was in the training data. So, but if you actually wanted it to reference sections of the book verbatim, you would put Lord of the Rings into ChatGPT's knowledge base, into a GPT, like you would upload it into a vector database or into a custom GPT as like a PDF. And then when you ask questions, you would say, hey, just instead of using your base knowledge of Lord of the Rings, use the source data that I uploaded. And so if you have ChatGPT, so you can create a personality, and I'm working on a personality with another famous billionaire right now, and his team asked me to make it. And he gave me all of his podcasts. He gave me all of his books. So I have first party information on like his entire like his kind of like spoken, his like, it's very performative if you're only like consuming like commencement speeches and like podcasts and books. But instead of ChatGPT pretending to be him, it's referencing that stuff and then pretending to be him. It's still pretending to be him, but it's referencing primary source material. And so it ends up being a more convincing persona. Yeah. So that's, and also like, we are getting better at creating systems that allow us to store that context longer term. Yeah.
About your point on.
Wait, I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
but just in the interest of.
Oh, yeah. How are we doing?
flying by, if you could
Yeah,
keep
for sure,
questions to the-
Cool.
Yeah, just so we can get.
Yeah, we have it. I think, yeah, okay. Let's do this. Yeah, so this is just an expansion of what he believes. So you have like CPU, LLM, Ethernet, kind of like the browser. RAM is just like the context window. Disk and file systems are kind of like a knowledge base. And then, yeah, and computers are networked, right? So similarly, these chatbots will be networked and they'll be able to reference each other. So your chatbot might talk to someone else's chatbot and then do even more interesting things. Yeah. And so basically we have like LLMs are this orchestrator across all the modalities. So there is the ability to generate images, but you have to think about that as possibly just a tool that an LLM could use, right? You can search the web, but that's another tool. Web browser becomes a tool the LLM can use. So it's like this orchestrator across all of the mediums. And I think that we might be in a place 3 years from now where you and I could have a conversation and then an LLM could design a video game based on what we like. We could just talk about what we wish existed, and then the LLM could get to work and start assembling that. It could be a video game. I think that's like where we're going. If you think all these pieces start stitching together. Yeah. So I think like you want to embrace some of these technologies. Obviously, just get good at ChatGPT and then see where it falls short. See where it's like broken and not good enough. That's a good like place to just be aware of its limitations, because then you're not giving it. You shouldn't overestimate its capabilities, but also you'll see where there's a lot of money to be made in shoring up these problems and like these weaknesses of this new system. And then I think Replit's great if you want to like prototype your own stuff, deploy software. You can go. It's probably one of the fastest ways to go from idea to deployed app. And I was building most of my agents on Replit, just because like I could deploy an agent on Replit, and then I'd be at a networking event, and I could whip out my phone. I could both dev on the agent, but also demonstrate it from my phone without even having I don't have an engineering team or even like a front end skill set. I just use GPT-4 to help me write my programs. And then I would say that like probably studying AI agents, that's more like near and dear to me, but I think it may become increasingly like relevant, because I think pretty much every brand, every single student group, every single company is going to have some kind of agent at its core. You're probably going to have your own agent, if not multiple, that kind of just help you, that are just dedicated to like unlocking your growth, your trajectory, whatever it is you want to do. You're probably going to be talking to some form of an agent that can like act on your behalf. And it's pretty wild to think about, especially like kids are going to have agents and they're going to be like learning faster than we ever learned. Cool. Q&A. Oh, nice. All right, cool. Yep.
Can you, I think something that a lot of people showed interest in was just maybe having an overview of your own agents
Yep.
so that we can build our own.
Yep.
Do you think we can do like some
Yep.
sort of overview for that?
I've got a bunch of tabs for exactly that. Yeah. Oh shit, this one I totally forgot. Let's see if I can zoom in. Let's start this from scratch. This is, so at the beginning of this year, there was a viral project. Let's see. There was a viral project. Let me open up a new console. Called Auto GPT. Does anyone know? You heard about Auto GPT? Yeah. This is like one of the most. It was one of the most popular projects on GitHub of all time. And when I looked at the code, I was like, wait a minute, this is something I could build. And then I was like, oh, it's the promise of like these systems that has people hyped. And it's not like that they're. It's basically like we have LLMs, but then Auto GPT was an attempt to make an LLM just kind of solve more complicated problems on relative autopilots. What if you just said, go build me a website and then like take as much time and just keep working? There was a second project, Baby AGI. Baby AGI was made by another guy. And it was like, these were the first two of the popular agent frameworks. It was just like individuals that had hacked together a couple of tools onto an LLM and then started letting them rip, you know, just like, hey, what can you do for me? So here I have, this is Baby AGI Chrome. I built this a long time ago, like I say a long time in AI time, so like 6 months ago. And basically it's my attempt, I forked the original Baby AGI project and I gave it a different knowledge base, ChromaDB. And I was just like, this is my first attempt to create like a chatbot that could actually break down a complicated task into subtasks. So it could be like, build a Dyson sphere. Does anyone know what a Dyson sphere is? Yeah, so it's like a space station that surrounds the sun. Yeah. And so basically it's like, oh, here's the objective, build a Dyson sphere. And then it's like, come up with a task list. Let's see, is it working? So right now I think it's trying to come up with the subtasks. Obviously, this thing is not about to build a space station, but is it about to do anything?
Is that using GPT, like
Yeah.
Bruin AI, or is it using?
This is GPT. Yeah. What the hell? Let's try that again.
Is this just how you used to do it before the custom?
Exactly. Yeah. And there is still reason to build your own. Come on. Okay, cool. So now it's taking that objective. It's like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And it's like, I need to gather information on the size and composition of the star. I need to come up with a plan. I need to figure out the tech. I need to get the materials. I need to figure out what materials. I need to figure out the cost. And then I need to figure out a blueprint. And I need to recruit a bunch of people. Then we got to go build it. And obviously, this thing is not going to still running. What the hell? Okay, cool. So it's like on step 3. Let's see, where are we? Design a monitoring system. So then it comes up with suggestions on like how to think about that step, and then it goes to the next one. Now, this was like Auto GPT at Baby AGI went viral, and before these these LLMs are just glorified task managers. They're just like breaking down your job into a bunch of sub jobs, and then but they don't actually execute the job because at the time these systems didn't have access to any tools, so no APIs, you couldn't even like write a file. So really, like I'd have to go read this and then do the thing myself, but it was these systems went viral because it was like, oh, if the thing can plan at like a basic level, then like what would happen if you gave it access to a couple tools and you were like, hey, like build me a personal website? Like, would you actually get a personal website? And now, back in the day, these systems were, I mean, they just kind of like run, but they don't actually do the job. So there's this last mile problem with agents that's going to take a whole decade. But like getting the agent to actually do the job is more on what we're gonna, is what custom GPTs are at the beginning of. And like if you think about custom GPTs that are more autonomous, that's like actual agents. So this is Baby AGI Chrome, and it uses ChromaDB as its long-term vector store. So when it does these plans and it puts them into its knowledge base, but it doesn't actually have any tools. It doesn't even have a web browser, so it couldn't even it can't even search the web. But that's a pretty cool one. It's like a task manager. Let's see, where else do I have? I think I can show you guys. Yeah. let's go to. Where's my projects? Yeah, if you ever go to my Replit, most of this stuff is just like out there. And you can pretty much copy it for free. I don't really care. Okay, cool. Like, let's see, Content Genie. Let's look at Phoenix Mark V. Let's look at old Phoenix. This one. Okay. Ignore like the code. We'll just focus on what it can do. Okay, cool. How do I hide this? Okay, let's close this. Close all other tabs. Okay. Does everyone see this on the right? Agent Phoenix is online. All right, cool. So this is one of my like pride and joys. Basically, after Baby AGI Chrome, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I kind of want to make these systems and like see where they can go next. And so I basically was like, okay, if Baby AGI Chrome can like break down a task into subtasks, then like, when can I make a system that has some basic tooling and can actually like do some useful stuff? So I created this chatbot, Phoenix, and it's basically GPT 3.5 turbo, 16K. So 16,000 token limit. I could change that to 4, but I forgot I should do that. So basically it's a chatbot, and it's like different from Baby AGI. This actually has access to some tools and can do some useful stuff. So I'd be like, what? Or I'd be like, what are you? Cool. I am Phoenix, an AI assistant built to help you with your projects. How can I help you today? What can you do? And so now it's using a function to get its help function. And now it's like, okay, what can I do? It's like, did it freeze? What the hell? Okay. Close this. Close this. Let's close this. We'll look at those later. So basically, Phoenix, it's like it lists its own capability. So it can search its own code. It can search the web. It can scrape the information from the internet. It can save state. It can read files and write files with some limitations, but it's cool. It can delete files, which I don't know. That's probably like overkill. It can create folders. It can ask you for more information, which is kind of cool because like sometimes you want it to just like, hey, like if the thing needs more information before it can do a good job, that might be like a capability you want to give it. It can search its own code base. It can count the tokens in a string or file, which is relevant if you're trying to read the Lord of the Rings and turns out Lord of the Rings is way too big. And it can create markdown files. That's cool because if you want to like format the output, markdown is a great way to do it. And it can help explain itself. It can move files and it can list files. So I'll be like, search the web for recent information on Sam Altman, on OpenAI. And then what it's going to do is it's going to do a Bing search any minute now.
While I was searching, how do you think
Oh, there
about
it is.
managing tokens calls to API?
That's a great question. It's basically like use 3.5 turbo. If you want it to be, use 4, but be cognizant of the cost. And honestly, what I'm going to add next to most of my agents is like some kind of cost estimate where it's like, how much do you think this is going to cost before you do it? And then if it goes above like $10, shoot me a text. Because, you can totally give it a job that's like, search all the information, like get the documentation on LangChain, scrape it all, and then start writing working code examples that we can use. And that's totally within its capabilities, but that might cost you $80. And it's like, if you ask a question that's like too complicated, like you could totally run through your credits pretty quickly with a system like this. So I think one, make some money so that you have money to lose. That's pretty important, or raise money, and then but just be cognizant. And token limits, it's like, I think in most cases, it's still better than like giving that job to another person. If it means that like you created a brand new automated solution, I think yeah, but you can also estimate the complexity of the task. If you see like, okay, I think it's going to look at X number of tokens, you can just multiply that by the price per token and be like, yeah, this is probably going to cost me $100 before I do it, right? So you would probably want to give your agent the ability to estimate and let you know. I think that's like one thing. And also just track it over time. Yep.
Would you be able to give a demonstration of our community? I think that's
Sure.
really customized.
Yeah.
And that could be really interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I got that. Basically, it does a Bing search and then it tells you what happened. So you can just have a chat with this thing. And I do this sometimes, be like, okay, follow-up question, then it search the web, then chat with it. And then it's also just saving everything to a folder. So if I actually want to go in and read those websites, I could. But instead, I have a chatbot that's just like, oh, here's what happened. Oh, here's what happened. Yep.
What kind of files do you create?
What kind of files can you create? So if you look at the create file function, write file, it's right here. It takes what did it say? Text files, Python files, Markdown files, JSON, CSV, HTML, XML, YAML. But that's not even all of them. The reason I say it's not all of them is because if you look at how I define the function, I basically say you can write a file, and like the parameters are like the content of the file and then the name of the file. But the name of the file has an extension, and I don't say what you can do. So you can actually generate C# scripts. You can generate whatever you can generate through text. It'll generate that file. And that's actually, it's funny, I built this, but now OpenAI's custom GPTs are basically this, but no code. So they've made this system of like web browsing plus like function calling and code interpreter plus like a basic knowledge base. They've made that the product that you and I can use without having to code. So actually we can go into that. Let's see. Where's Parth GPT actually? So I have a bunch of GPTs over here. Oh, dude, check this out. I'm building 100 or 1,000. So I have a basic dashboard going up, and I just keep working on it. Oh, this one's Parth GPT. Oh, actually, you guys should probably see this one too. This is StratGPT, and in 15 minutes I generated this presentation. So I was like helping build a presentation. I'm going to be talking to a bunch of UCLA kids. Here's the diagram I'm going to talk about. Blah 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 blah. It came up with some ideas. I was like, good, cool. Just like, let me save it. It generated the whole presentation, and then it let me download it. But then I was like, yo, add some formatting. So it put the UCLA color scheme in. So if you look over here, like over here, it's like UCLA blue, UCLA gold. I didn't say that. It's just like, oh, cool, you're doing for UCLA kids. Just put some. So this is the first time I even I was like, this is pretty cool for like a first try. It just basically wrote the deck, and then I downloaded it, and then we looked at it together. That's StratGPT. It's one of my most popular GPTs. This is Parth GPT. This is like, if you go to my LinkedIn, and feel free to connect after. If you go to my LinkedIn, it just says talk to my agent, and you click that link, it gets you here. And then this is a chatbot where I was just like, here's all my projects, and if someone asks about them, just like link them to it. And so like I could just be like, yeah, and it's got some starter questions, and it's like, and I also put my resume in here. So it's more of a conversational agent that represents my brand, and then instantly routes you to like whatever the fuck like I did that you might be interested in. So it's like blah 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 blah. I built this.
I'm so good.
You should. Everyone should do this. And see, the crazy thing is, like, I was like, these are all these links, right? But now it's like it direct links to all those things, right? So it's like it links to my Patreon, it links to my Calendly, it even links to like my YouTube. Like it'd be like, yeah. This stuff is really cool. So yeah. So you can just like put a bunch of links, and if you look at it, I'll show you guys under the hood. I don't mind sharing the prompts. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the like editing interface of custom GPTs, right? So you give it a name, you give it a picture, and then you give it a bunch of instructions, and then we can look at the instructions. And so this is what so this is me giving it a role, right?
It's like generate that using GPT.
No, but how do you think I'm going to do 1,000? Say exactly. So that's in spreadsheet in Google Sheets you can get an extension called GPT for Sheets, and then you can use GPT in the spreadsheet. So much more powerful than actually using a spreadsheet. So then it's just like a little bit about me. I basically just put stuff in, and then here it's like if you want blah blah blah, and then it just links. So I'm just adding to this list, right? Anytime I make something, instead of like making, I mean, I'm gonna make a website, but now I'm too lazy because it's like if people just talk to this, they'll be able to find stuff.
It's cool how you've written if you need a research agent, and you made another GPT for that.
And this thing links to other agents. Now this is exactly so. Yeah. So show me some agents. We say show me some agents. This GPT doesn't actually. I didn't give it code interpreter, web browsing, or DALL-E. I give it web browsing. But see here.
How did you put the quotes? How did you put the links in? Or where did how are the links connected to this GPT? Is it
Over here?
Oh, you just have them in.
Yes.
Wait, you just put the URLs in it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but if you're not, it's like it's the only software that you need, bro. Like it's like the most important. It's like $20 a month to get the best intelligence on the planet, and you don't even have to I use GPT to teach me how to build other stuff. So it's like more useful than I don't know. It's easy as $20. I mean, I spent so much. I use GPT to teach myself how to build agents, and now I use the API, and I'm spending $200 a month just through the API making custom stuff, right? And so intelligence is one of those things you can get, especially chatbots, you can get addicted to. Yeah. And it's like it links to my music video, right? Like you could just talk to this thing and it'll find what's most relevant, but also it links to what I think are my best other GPTs. So this is like a Python GPT. So you click it and it just takes you to Pix GPT, which is a Python pair programmer. Yeah. So you could be like research agent. This takes you to.
Is there a way that it doesn't even have to take you there, and then it can itself interact with that one?
I think that's on OpenAI's roadmap.
Okay.
But that's just a theory. That's a theory. But basically, my theory is that look, one is great, many is greater. Getting many to work together is really interesting. A group chat. I mean, it's not much more complicated. I mean, I have actually a custom solution that I built on Replit that is more like a group chat simulation. So I already know that is valuable. So for me, it's like it's only a matter of when. Is it going to be 6 months or a year before we get all of these networked? Because they are much more interesting if you can get them to work together. And this is Phoenix, but now in custom GPT. So you saw Phoenix Mark II. I'm going to make 100 versions of just Phoenix. There's going to be one that's open source. There's going to be one that's whatever crypto AI comes out, it's going to be blockchain based. There's going to be basically I'm just rebuilding Phoenix in every single, and that's why I named it Phoenix. It's just like some rebirth concept. Yeah. So if you say what is Phoenix? The advantage to using custom GPTs is because, I mean, the downside is that people need GPT-4. The advantage is that there's 100 million weekly active users on OpenAI. So while I do make more powerful tools custom, that ends up more being for me or for clients that want to pay a premium to get something that's more bespoke. But if you just want something that your friends can use, it's and these things are crazy useful, right? So I have that's Phoenix, then there's this one, that's StratGPT that we saw, right? And so help me build a presentation. What is StratGPT? I want to solve a Rubik's Cube. And then what's cool is if you look at this, we look at the prompt here. Yeah, fine tuning is probably less. I think you should always think prompt engineering is more important than fine tuning. So tailor your prompt, and then fine tuning is more useful if you want to get if you want to nail a style and you want it to match a certain creator's style of voice, or if you fine tuning is more important if you, let's say your prompt's way too big. If your prompt is super big and you're building on the API, you're going to spend a lot of money just putting that into the prompt, and you may want to fine tune the model. But honestly, I don't even fine tune really. It's not the most useful thing. This is a pretty cool. Okay, so let's see. Where is it? Okay, check this out. So this sentence might help you guys. So it's like the way StratGPT works is that when you talk to it, it tries to predict what you're going to ask for next, and then it just gives you a couple options. And so if you're lazy, you just hit the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's like a pretty good trick for making GPTs people can quickly pick up, because one, very likely it'll predict their next action. And then if you can reduce, instead of having them prompt it, you can just have them hit a button, or you can say 1, but do this. And so like hotkeys are a way to get people onboarded onto your GPT very quickly. And in this case, I'm also shilling my other projects. So yeah.
I have 2 questions. Number 1, what is the ideal end goal that, or the vision that you see? Let's say that you create 1,000 GPTs.
Yeah.
Where are you at in your life at that point, and how does this integrate? And
Yeah.
the second question is anybody doing this on Fiverr or freelancing on this, like just creating GPTs for people?
Look, I think, yeah, so you're asking if there's a market for this. Okay, so first question is like, what are you gonna do once you have 1,000? Well, initially my goal was like, I'll just build 100 because I used to introduce myself, I was an indie hacker and I built AI agents. And then this guy was like, he works in Hollywood, he's like, nah, dude, you need a way better line than that. I'm building 100 intelligent assistants. And then I started saying that and people were like, oh, this guy's building 100 of these. Which is interesting because a lot of people are betting the farm on a single chatbot for their business. And what I think is that like I have chatbots that don't need to make money, that are just like creative, interesting, like explorations of latent space. Like you're just exploring a topic, trying to teach yourself something. And then you realize there are certain tricks you just realize when you're playing around with these tools, when they don't need to make you money or keep your business alive. And then those tactics you can cross-pollinate across your other GPTs. So I realized this hotkey thing, but now I use it for like, I have GPTs that are specific to video games. Like anyone play Cyberpunk? Yeah, so Cyberpunk is it's like a popular game, and like I have a GPT that just sits on the game documentation and where the items in the game are. So I'd be like, I need a better shotgun, and then the chatbot will acts like a character in the game, and it's like, oh, you could just drive to this guy on this side of the town. You drive over there, sure enough, the guy has the item. And why does that work? Because the knowledge base I gave it had a list of all the item locations. So it has like better. You're going to see these systems inside the game. You're going to have in 2 years from now, we're going to have intelligent NPCs in the game that can walk you through the game, like have conversations. Yep.
I would assume that GPT different than just like free, like they're just telling the ChatGPT a lot of like, whatever the same information before.
Up front.
Yeah.
This is like it's kind of like a bookmarked prompt.
Okay. So.
But it's like you've wound it up, and now you can use it and you can share it.
So like every prompt ways this force to get a can then just like text them like on fast.
This is people were doing that a lot. They kept reusing starter prompts, and then OpenAI recognized that, and they're like, well, we should productize this.
Okay, so it's like a start.
Yeah, it's like your ability to give it a system prompt. Here's how you behave, right? And then you give it access to tools. And so, and I haven't even gone into these, so you can give it conversation starters. That makes it possible for people to see what it can do. But then here it's like capabilities, web browsing. So this is really useful if you want it to be able to access information in the real world. DALL-E image creation, that's just cool if you like generating images, it's fun. And then code interpreter is powerful because it gives it access to the full range of Python. So StratGPT can generate a PowerPoint presentation because PowerPoint is a library in Python. So code interpreter, huge canvas for it's like basically a super data scientist. Like it's like if you want your GPT to have data science capability, but go beyond and like make stuff with like Python, you enable code interpreter. And then you can also upload files. I didn't upload files for this one because I don't think it really needs them. And you can create actions, and this is more advanced, but you can basically connect the GPT to other APIs, right? And this is like really powerful, but a little more advanced. And like you could basically connect it to like if you have an API for information on the weather, or like a medical database, or you plug it into other software. This is like how custom GPTs will be able to plug into all this other software in the world. And that is a pretty big milestone for OpenAI, because if we can create our own custom GPTs and then plug them into what we think is useful, then all of a sudden, instead of OpenAI building a single chatbot and trying to predict what's useful for everyone, they give us a tool that builds chatbots that allows us to integrate it into our own surfaces. Do we have a question here? Yeah.
So you're giving like your audiences like, a lot of agents and like access to data.
Yeah.
Are you receiving like any benefits?
Yeah. So monetizing. Yeah. Okay, actually, I don't even think, okay, so yeah, this is interesting. You're talking about the market. He was asking about what the market for this looks like, if there's a Fiverr. I'm sure there are people on Fiverr making these. I know there are non-technical people making these and selling them to businesses, but I think it's a little bit early, but it is true. Like well, I say, here's how it is. Like I put these up and I just put them out there and I let anyone use them. And what OpenAI, what they've said is there's gonna be a marketplace, kind of like the App Store, and there's gonna be rev share for the creators of the GPTs. We're not there yet, so that is not realized. But what's happened is that now GPT-4 is one of the fastest growing techs on the planet. Like everyone's on this wait list now. And I mean, if you imagine like they're at 100 million weekly actives, like what if they hit 1 billion, right? Like, and then our custom GPTs, like it remains to be seen, but if these custom GPTs play out like an app store, then you might just see an explosion of use cases. And then they're going to try to do a revenue share model where like creators are going to earn a percentage on revenue based on if people are using yours, they'll like cut you a check. But what I've noticed is because I build these, people want them, and then people want them for themselves or their own business. And it's like, if you want a private GPT, like you could go build it yourself, or you could come to me who you know could make this really quickly. And then that turns, and then you basically realize like what I can do off platform. So I start upselling like custom solutions. So I build these, but you saw the things I can do in Replit. People they find this, and then they're like, oh, can you make one for my business? And so then now I'm like monetizing this other level, which is like, oh yeah, this is like the kind of stuff I do for everyone. But if you want me to make something custom for your business, that's like a premium. And what's the market rate? I'm honestly right now figuring it out. 2 days ago, I went break even on my own. Like I launched my consulting firm on this like a month ago. I was like, I should turn this knowledge into cash so I don't have to get a regular job. And then now a month later, I have more people that want to work with me than I even know how to deal with. Like I'm just like late on response. I don't even reply to emails fast enough. I got to build an email GPT so that it can just handle this thing. And then like now I need to figure out what the price is. So like everyone who uses these things and then asks me to build, like when they start working with me one-on-one, they're like, you're not charging enough for this knowledge because you've put like 7 months every single day, 10 hours in, and now you have these cheat codes. But I'm kind of like, okay, then I need to just figure out what the market rate is. So every new customer I work with these days, I just raise the price. Because I need to figure out where the actual market rate is. Right now, it's like for one-on-one consulting on everything that we've kind of covered so far, I'm charging like 150 to 200 bucks. And they think that's a steal because the people that are, yeah, I mean, if you compare that to management consulting, like, and then
sure if you like go to billionaires or like really rich people and even ask for $1,000.
Yeah, no, I literally, they're like when there's a billionaire that's working with me, and he's like, what's your corporate rate? Like this is you can't. He's like this is. So I'm kind of like, wow, like there might. I mean, a month ago I was like, it'd be nice to make some money off of this. Now I'm like, okay, cool. Like let's like see where this goes. Yeah.
Is there a way to work with more complex GPTs?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at some of this. So this is Baby AGI, and this you saw what I demonstrated. Baby AGI Chrome. It was built on this was the underlying like architecture of Baby AGI. Oh, God. This chart. So if you see this is like the kind of cognitive loop that Baby AGI goes through. And then there was Auto GPT it went viral, but now I guess they're a company. What the hell? Okay. So this was like a GitHub project, and now it's like a product. Okay, cool. No, their code is also like you can just rip the GitHub. Yeah. So I mean, basically they were most popular, and now they're trying to build a company off of it. And then there was AutoGen, which was also an independent project, and then Microsoft backed it. But this is yeah. Well, the AutoGen became popular because it was a multi-agent framework. So like what you're talking about is like, can you get a system of these to work in concert together? And AutoGen is like the first interesting, successful version of that. I was building my own custom, just like, can I put 4 chatbots, give them a couple tools, and will they like fuck up? But there's a lot of problems to solve. It's a very new frontier of like multi-agent coordination. And I think that it's a good way to get around this like context limit problem, where like a chatbot might only have like a custom GPT, you can only put 8,000 characters of instructions. But how do you actually get it to do more? Or like give it more tools? If it only can have 128,000 tokens, well, maybe you put it into a group with a couple other specialists. So like, And actually, the diagram I showed you with LLM OS, there's a second diagram. Org chart. If I can find it fast, I'll pull it up. I might have to share it later, but it was basically the same LLM OS chart that I showed you. And instead, Parth Patil, the guy who tweeted it out, he tweeted out a second tweet and then he deleted it, which was just like a little too controversial, which is just LLM OS, CEO, CFO, CTO, security officer. And basically imagine an entire org chart of a company that worked GPTs, each being a specialist. And then the theory is like, if you had this and they were all formidable and they worked well in concert together, you'd have a chatbot team that could generate the infrastructure for a company. So that goes back to like, why am I building 100? Because I actually think that's like a reasonable place to get to, even if they're not fully autonomous. I have one that's like, it's called Saka Intel, and you guys might like it. It's like, if you're ever interested in like building a business, I was just like, as I started getting flooded with like clients and inbound and stuff, I was like, okay, well, how do I build a business plan if my company is just a bunch of AI chatbots? And then it just starts getting to work, right? And it's like writing the business plan. And then like, I made this because I was like, oh, I need to get organized. Oh, I should make a GPT to do that. And that's actually how I kind of do things. I just like, hey, I should just make a GPT. Let's go, yeah, we'll go down this.
Just for questions.
Yep.
I doubt we have about 15 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah, so just, first of all, this is all insanely cool. Not only am I probably gonna make one of my own for my LinkedIn page and Instagram, but I'm probably gonna try to see if Bruin AI can make an entire one for their LinkedIn and their Instagram.
Yeah.
And then something else we could do is make one for every other club. So
Yeah.
we can just pitch it to other clubs and ask to make GPTs for them, and that can be something for us.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, so we can definitely try doing that and see like how we can like make that work across UCLA.
Yeah.
But like we can make GPTs for other clubs.
Yeah, and I think
I honestly see this as like full consulting companies, just working with different companies.
I mean, I'm seeing it myself. I totally could see that playing out on the campus. I think every student group would like. Well, my friend's he made a GPT for his frisbee team, which is like a semi-pro frisbee team. He's like, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, you guys need intelligence, and it's like, yeah.
And this would be so cool too, because it would involve us gathering like data from the club of like what the club's all about, like how to get in, what they want, and then the applicant doesn't have to email someone. They could just go to their GPT and ask like, what are the requirements?
Yep.
What do you guys typically do?
Yep.
Like these are questions we get all the time. So you just make that automated.
Yeah.
Not just us, but every other club.
Then we kind of UCLA and add all of these links on the page.
And you guys have
do it every
distributed.
single other one.
Yeah, it's a brilliant play. I find it hard to believe that wouldn't work. And also, you guys will learn a lot about what each different group needs. Yeah. Also, like, I think if you're going to the monetization thing real quick, right now you can only make GPTs on a personal account, but you have to imagine OpenAI is also working on business plans and Teams accounts. So you'll probably have an org level OpenAI, like kind of like Slack has Teams accounts. Yeah. OpenAI is going to have that. But once there's Teams accounts, you could basically have someone who doesn't know how to use ChatGPT who wants a GPT. Yeah. And then you would build their GPT for them on their Teams plan. Like you just add it to their. So that's like, I think that's where they're going to go. I think it could be sooner, like in the next 3 months.
Guys, that's what we're doing. That's our game plan.
I would totally love to help in any way. Sweet. Let's go, dude. We ain't going broke. All right.
I got two questions.
Yeah.
First of all, how did you upload all this like back to the cyberpunk thing? All the like that knowledge base. Where did you get it from? And what did you upload? Was it like a PDF format? Was it just like a link to a website? What did that look like?
So we'll go to it actually. It's in Replit. That one's in Replit. Yeah, so I basically I just searched I looked up the most recent game docs and I went to the wiki and I just scraped it. Okay. And I didn't even scrape it. I was too lazy to even scrape it. I just Control A, Control C, Control V, Control S, and then drag that text file in. And then let's see, profile, runner GPT. Okay. Many worlds is cool. I kind of want to show that. That one's oh well. We'll see if we have time at the end. Next question. I'll just take it while I'm
Okay, so I have a question regarding I guess your monetization and also kind of just like chatbots in general, because when you look at it, I know there's this huge like legal battle going on with AI generated images and like Disney and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But I was also wondering, like, when you're creating a chatbot, right?
Yeah.
And you have this like product that's incredibly similar to someone else's product, and both of you guys are trying to monetize that product at the same time, right? Because a lot of the companies right now, a lot of the startups, they all have like their own like GPTs they're starting off of.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, it's like the base code, like half of it is the same, half of the prompts they're using is the same. So what happens to intellectual property? Like, is it like, is there a defined intellectual property, or is like everyone free from copyright, or how's that work?
The intellectual property thing is like maybe a little bit different from the like, is there any moat? Like is there, like, if everyone can make it, like, is it worth making?
Right, but it's like,
But-
let's say one of your GPTs that you are monetizing that aren't public on your GitHub page. Let's say I made the exact same thing as you,
Yeah.
because like I have like it's not like the prompt, like when you're thinking of it, like different companies, most of them have like similar problems, right? And so most of them kind of want like similar ideas, similar things. So then like let's say you and I both release the same exact GPT at the same time.
Yeah, yours existing and mine existing doesn't mean that they'll reach the same level of success. Like I might just hit the pavement harder than you on selling it,
Okay.
right? And then like me having 100 might mean that I have many more opportunities for them to cross-pollinate their own like insight. It's like, yeah, it's like, is there a moat in this? And like, if anyone can do it, is it like all of a sudden, like if you're competing, engineers competing with non-technical people, like, is there really any open questions for sure? But I still think that like people who work harder tend to like reach the answer, and then people who spectate tend to not, right? So, and then also to the other question of like differentiation, the only moat I can think of is like your own data and like having the best data. So like, for example, like I work for this one rich tech guy, and he gave me his books and he gave me his podcast. Technically, like you could go and do the same thing, but like you're not going to beat me because like I'm teamed up with him and he's giving me like direct access. You would have to scrape it and you'd have to do a lot more work. This is Runner GPT. It's finally loading. Jeez, these things are slow.
And to add to that a little bit, one question, I think this makes me think before the marketplace comes out, before there's like full patents and laws that come out.
Yeah.
I want to just scrape everything and get like a knowledge base of this before it becomes like it's covered before that.
Yeah, so I think there's an implication that we may be nearing like where maybe people will become more defensive about what they put on the internet, and you can add a little file to your website, to your robots.txt, and you can basically say, OpenAI, you can't scrape my website. And that means that like any chatbot that it's like you can basically say no to agents scraping your website. And now then it's like you are not going to be discovered by an agent that's doing web browsing, but maybe now like you're not in GPT-5 training data, and maybe you want that. But maybe you want to be in GPT-5's training data. Like GPT-4 doesn't know who I am, but GPT-5 might. And then it's like, what does it know about me? Well, it'll be what I let it scrape. Yeah.
I saw a podcast by Peter Diamandis.
Yeah.
Who's in he's a famous guy around here.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The one with Stability CEO.
He does like Singularity University.
Yeah.
And he does like anti-aging AI stuff.
Yeah.
And he did a podcast like with his own GPT.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
was
saw
like
that
an
one.
animated
I saw that,
GPT
yeah.
of him.
Yeah.
So he was talking to himself.
Yeah.
So he can kind of act as like a self-therapist as well, where like it can collect data about you and what you have, and then it can be like a self-reflective viewpoint.
I have friends that are doing this. Like, and honestly, it's like the biggest case there is probably for journaling is that like you might grow old and you may not have the great memory anymore, but like it would be interesting to think about like if some like I think it would be cool if like my great grandkids before like it's like if they're about to make a mistake, like my construct emails them and is like, bro, don't do this. Don't do this, you know? Yeah. But this is Runner GPT. It's just a chatbot that sits on top of a folder of data, and that data is just like a PDF of like the book, the guide. Basically, they released an update to the game like this year, and I just downloaded the PDF and I put it in this folder. PDF's not really loading, but I promise you this is a PDF of like the changes they made to the game, because the base game, like ChatGPT was trained up until 2021. So the version of the game that it has in its world model is 2 years old. So like the devs have made a bunch of changes to the game since then. So if you ask ChatGPT about a game, but you don't give it a knowledge base that's current, it's going to give you information about that game from 2 years ago, which is almost useless, right? Like who wants to know about Madden from 2 years ago? And then I went to the wiki, and it even says, I went to the wiki and I just copied like stuff that I wanted this thing to understand. So like, what do each of the items in the game do? What are the weapons and where are they in the game world? Right, so this is item locations. So like locations of all the weapons. So when you talk to this, it'll be like, I need a better shotgun. And then it also has voice, but I think I disabled it. Yeah, and then it's like recommending a shotgun. Oh, confirm, sure, let's see what it sounds like.
Watson. Happy hunting.
What are you? And this chatbot doesn't have any conversation memory, so it just like answers one
I
question.
am Runner GPT, an AI agent created by the Netrunner P47. I am here to assist you in navigating the cyberpunk universe and provide information and guidance for your adventures. How can I assist you today?
Yeah. So it's basically just a folder of like game data that I put in that I know is current. And then the chatbot is GPT 3.5 Turbo. And then it doesn't, so if I say, what's my name? If I say my name is Parth, it'll be like, hi Parth. But then if I say, what's my name? It'll be like, I don't know. Because I didn't give it, I was like, you have a conversation memory of one message. You're like a fish, like a goldfish. Like you don't actually, like every time you talk to it, it's fresh. And that's just a way for me to save money again. Because if you want it to actually have conversation memory, now you're passing all of the message histories back to OpenAI, and now you're like spending more money. You can get around that if you use the new assistance API, because then they have threads managed on their side. Which I have a Python GPT that can teach you how to build bleeding edge agents too. Yep.
What do you think about companies who want to build their own GPTs or systems using GPTs, but they don't want to share data, so they want like a local system that can run on their own service?
Yeah.
Because Llama can run on its own service, but OpenAI doesn't have any.
Yeah. When you are pinging OpenAI and then they're responding, and then
but then you send the data back.
Yeah, well, when you use the API, they're not training on it. But there are companies that have no interest in even that level of association. So in that case, you want to use a local model, and you would want to look at like Llama, Mistral. Basically, you go to Hugging Face and you look at the leaderboard, and you look at the leaderboard of open source, and then you try to make it work with one of those models. None of them actually are at GPT-4 level, which is a testimony to their advantage, the lead that they have. I think in the next year, we might see a GPT-4 level open source model, and that's going to be great. And this is like an arms race. So I think OpenAI is going to keep pushing their advantage. They're making custom GPTs. They're adding a dev like advantage. So I think something to monitor. I have my chatbot literally like it checks the web for the leaderboards, and then it's waiting for a GPT-4 competitor. And once a GPT-4 competitor shows up, it lets me know, and then it starts refactoring itself. It's like clone yourself, use the other model, and then for the next 2 weeks, we're just going to run you guys against each other, and then the best one gets the job.
How does it let you know? So I think
Email.
So I think we're like 3 minutes till. So do you have any closing statements? If you want to share any.
I'll probably like send a bunch of links at the end. But closing statements, like, don't wait for someone else to write the textbook. It doesn't exist. Just get your hands dirty. And like, honestly, like, there's no experts. I'm not an expert. A lot of what I said may not be like relevant like a year from now. But honestly, it's like the only way to learn is to get your hands dirty and to have friends that are also paying attention. And I think this is like a group that knows that. So, yeah.